Well, welcome, friends. Really excited. It's our first day of our new stack. Oh, I just love the first day. It's so fun. So fun to start a new language. It's so fun to teach MERN and be part of like this stack. So really excited to be back with you guys or to be with you guys. Um, so if you didn't know, if you're in the wrong class, if this is MERN, this is JavaScript. So if you're supposed to be in Java or you're supposed to be in Python or project neural algorithms or anything else, you are in the wrong class. Hopefully you are supposed to be here. But this is MERN. This is our week one, lecture one. Obviously today is November 24th. Yep, got that right. And great. My name is Will. I am going to be your instructor for the next 9 weeks. Now this is an 8-week stack, but we'll have a little break week built in. We'll kind of cover that in the calendar here in a bit. But over the next 9 weeks, I am going to be your instructor. With me, we have got Garrett Turner. He is our teaching assistant, our wonderful TA. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction. I'll hand it over to him, and then we'll kind of get into it. So yeah, like I said, my name is Will. I'll be your instructor. I've been with Coding Dojo for over 3 years now, and I've worn a ton of different hats. I've been an instructor. I've been a TA. I've led our Azure cloud kind of partnership with Microsoft and teaching for Microsoft on behalf of Coding Dojo. I've worked in the data science program, so needless to say, I've worn a ton of different hats here. But I love Coding Dojo. I'm actually a product of Coding Dojo. Was kind of a student, not kind of, I was a student, became a TA, did that for a bit, became an instructor, loved that, started kind of doing all the different, wearing the different hats, and then actually left Coding Dojo for a bit. Now I didn't leave fully. I was a TA kind of in the evenings, but I left and I was a developer and worked for a couple different companies as a developer, and then decided to come back. And now I'm an instructor again full-time, which is really fun. A little bit about me and things I have to bring up just for fun. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I am an avid sports person. So if you like sports, we can talk sports. If you don't like sports, that's okay. I am more than just sports. So we can hopefully talk anything. And if not, I like trying new things. I've got 2 images. I've got 2 little fur children that I love so much. This one is named Charlie. I call him Chuck or Chunk because he's a little overweight, but that's okay. He is my pride and joy. I love him so much. He is a Labradoodle, but he is an F1, meaning that he is still wiry and sheds everywhere. His mom was a lab and his dad was a poodle. My wife and I, when we got married, I said, okay, we could get a second dog because she brought a dog into the relationship. I said we could get a second dog as long as it doesn't shed. We found it, or we found him on Craigslist. I should have known there. He's a Labradoodle. Saw the mom and the dad. I didn't know anything about dogs, and so I remember I wore a black shirt and I held him, and I had hair everywhere. And my wife finessed me and was like, "Oh, that's just his puppy hair. That'll leave, and then he will never shed again." It's like, okay, great. And so now my favorite purchase of 2023 is a Roomba, because it vacuums for me and it is the best because he sheds everywhere. The second dog, who is equally the apple of my eye, is my dog Marley. She is goofy. She has the smallest ears. She sometimes looks like a mix between a bear and a panther. The reason I show my dogs is also to let you know that this little kiddo does have epilepsy. And so sometimes, and it's happened a couple times while I was an instructor, sometimes she will have a seizure while I'm teaching. If that's the case, she's A-okay. This is normal. We have her on medicine. She goes to the doctor. She's okay. But if that ever happens, I will just simply say, hey, my dog's having a seizure. I'll be right back. So if I'm in the middle of teaching, I will pause. I'll try to pause the recording. Usually I'll just try to mute myself. They take about 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes for her to kind of have her seizure, come out of it, and then be okay. And so if that's the case, I might be 5 or 10 minutes or I'm incapacitated, and then I'll come back. So if that is the case, just wanted to forewarn you guys. Occasionally she does have seizures. It's not every stack. It's not every day. Usually she has them about once or twice a month. But there's no sort of rhyme or reason on when she has them. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up in case that is the case. I am, again, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I'm married. I don't have a picture of my wife. Probably should do that. But she is a student. She's finishing her last year at law school. So we're really excited. She goes to Gonzaga Law out in Spokane, which is fun. So that is a little bit about me. Garrett, if you want to go ahead and take over for a second, you're welcome to.
Sure. Yeah. How's it going, everybody? I recognize some faces from Office Hour and then some other faces that are new. And there's some other names that I've seen in previous actions working forward in Discord. So good to see everybody. I'm Garrett. I'm a product of the dojo as well. I went through a program early 2022. Yeah, absolutely love software engineering and coding. I came from teaching English as a second language background kind of through my 20s. I've been a bartender through my 20s. But yeah, I taught in a few different countries. And I think that coding for me came about because I could still teach, in some capacity, and I was still working with languages. So when I really started to look into it, I really loved the idea of coding kind of translated exactly to like teaching English, like teaching coding. So for me, it just clicked right away. So I've loved it, especially React. I love JavaScript. It's my favorite stack to program in. So I'm excited for this cohort specifically. But I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Indiana initially, small town. I live out here in Maui in Hawaii. I have for the past 5 or 6 years. I live with my girlfriend out here. We're very happy. Could be relocating soon, but that's, a different story. But yeah, I spend a lot of time coding, building projects. What else? When I'm not coding or working, I'm always outside. I spend as much time as I can in the ocean and just out and about here. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Garrett. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Great. Yeah. Garrett is awesome. And we are here to help and be sort of just kind of advocates for you throughout this program. Just so you know, this is the MERN/JavaScript is actually one of my favorite stacks to teach as well. This is a very, very fun stack. It can get difficult at times. It's a little bit different flow from Java and Python. So if you've taken one or both of those, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But that's why we're here, right? To help advocate, to kind of make sure that you are on the right path and that, you don't get too overwhelmed, because it is very, very doable. I've taught literally thousands of students at Coding Dojo. So you can do it, I promise. Cool. So what I'll do, and every instructor is different at Coding Dojo. So everybody has their own kind of quirks and how we do things. So just kind of get you used to how I sort of walk through things. Is at the beginning of each class, it is going to sound like I am maybe nails on a chalkboard. But I'm going to say this every class. I will tell you that you have got discussion questions due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So please go make sure you do that. They are open. I opened them early yesterday morning. So they are open. If you have any issues where it doesn't look like they're open, usually that all you have to do is just log out and log back in. And then sometimes it shows up. Not sure why that's the case, but I've had, last stack I had a student who had that issue. But if you are not seeing that they're open, please log out, log back in. If that still doesn't work, please ping me immediately, and then we can try to get that fixed for you. You've got some core assignments due, and I'm actually going to head over here to our assignment checklist. And you can see you've got 3 core assignments due. It is going to be predict destructuring, convert to arrow, and prop it up. So those are your 3 core assignments due. Just as a reminder, you do have to complete 80% of your discussion questions in order for you to pass on this stack to continue on. And then you have to do 90% of your core assignments. So please make sure you stay on top of these, and you will get plenty of reminders from me, emails from your SEMs. You're gonna get plenty of information, but please make sure that you are aware of what you need to do. But really, again, I'm going to tell you this at every class. You got discussion questions. Here's your core assignments. Please make sure you do those. Cool. Um, some instructors send a video for like at the beginning of class or with the welcome email, which you all should have received. And they kind of go through all this stuff. I've just not had lots of success. I look at the view rates. I can see all the analytics on YouTube. So usually I like to do this at the beginning from a very high level, what we're going to be using, what we should be seeing, and kind of how I operate with these different tools. You guys are, even if this is your first full-time stack, you've already been through programming basics and web fundamentals, at least at minimum. So you should be familiar with all of these tools, but I do just want to make sure I hit on them. We've got a couple important ones. I'm going to skip Discord for right now. And I'm going to go to our Google Class sheet. This is going to be one of the most important things that you have or you see throughout this stack. And then secondly, through the next coming time, because there's going to be different dates and different things from holidays. We are entering into the holiday season. This is usually the weird season of like, okay, when are we off? When are we not off? Etc. Etc. So I want to make sure that you are aware, you have all the information. And so this is going to be the most up-to-date of everything we have. This is where I will put this recording. I will put, if we have an office hour and I record it, I will put that link here. You can find a ton of different things. You can find our lecture Zoom link. If you need to meet with me, if you have one-on-one, if you have some concerns with class, or you have, something that can't be handled in Dojo Hall or something you specifically need me for, you can set that up here on my Calendly. After maybe today, but more so probably tomorrow, I'll set up our GitHub repo or repository for this class. You'll get that link, the video playlist, all the information, the assignment checklist. If you want to go to Dojo Hall, any helpful links you have, career services, bonus videos, all that good stuff. You can come here, and this is going to have everything for you. I will try to update these as well, especially when I have a recording. Anything that I covered, I will put that recording here, and I'll put the sort of topics there. We have a couple things we're covering today. Again, I want to make sure you guys are ready to have an overview. We'll do a JavaScript recap, and then we are going to talk about sort of ES6 and destructuring if we can, which we should be able to. We should be okay to do that. And then, you can sort of tentatively see what we're going to be talking about. Anything that I don't talk about here, we will kind of stack it onto the next class, but we'll make sure we try to stay on par as much as we can. We will be talking about arrow functions tomorrow. I don't think we'll have time today. One thing I want to make you very aware of, and I think it was maybe Brittany who was in the stack or in the Discord who kind of pointed this out. Thank you for pointing it out. I was trying to figure out what exactly the weeks we were off were. But I want to make sure that you're aware that after week 4, so basically halfway through, you're going to have a week off. Now, this is Thanksgiving week. So there's going to be nothing. There's going to be no TA help. There's going to be no instructor help. This is a full break week for Coding Dojo. So take that time, especially if this is your last stack and you've been going for a little bit, take that time to rest. So you will have this break week, and then the following week, we will start again with week 5, and we will be moving forward with that. Cool. We are going all the way up until the 22nd of December. That is just kind of giving you a preemptive knowledge. After that next week, I think the next couple weeks is break weeks. So you will have a little bit of a break. I think it's at least a minimum of 2 weeks, could be 3, that you're not going to have class. So if you're moving on to your next stack, I believe it's the 1st or 2nd week of January that we will come back and you will have class. So if you're moving on to projects and algorithms or another full stack language of Java or Python, you will have a couple weeks. So if you're trying to plan your Christmas plans, just know that you will, at minimum, you will have Christmas, the whole Christmas week off. And I believe it's the 2nd week. I'll make sure that I get some clarification on the exact days that you'll come back. But if you have any questions on that, feel free to ping me. Either email me or Discord me. Email is the easiest thing for me to see it. So I would kind of say, because I don't know why the Discord application keeps failing on my laptop, and so I have to go in the browser, and it's a whole thing. But email is a better way. It's on my phone. It's all that stuff. So again, just wanted to let you know kind of what the holiday season's going to look like. And we do have this break week here, which is awesome. Cool. Any questions on the calendar? Any questions on the break week? Any holiday questions?
I see that there are two weeks that are listed as end of week or end of the exam period. When would the exam period start?
Great question. It is week 6. So this should not say, so this would be first exam opening. So this is first exam opening. Oh, great question. Thank you for catching it. Sorry, with this break week, I had to, I'll go in and fix that so that it starts at the end of week 6. You will have your first retake opportunity in week, really it'll be week 7, and then it'll officially end in week 8. So great catch there. Thank you so much. Let me do that. Cool. So I'll go in and do that, but your first exam opening is going to be this Friday, the 8th. Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'll go in and make sure. It looks like these are even the same too. So I'll go in and update those. Okay. Any other questions on this?
So for the next stack, it will start in January.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So after this, which if I don't have a calendar handy, but if I have a calendar open, be 12, 22. So the next week will be Christmas. You'll definitely have that off. Coding Dojo will be closed. And then usually, let me I'll look on my phone real fast. Or to pull up a calendar. So yeah, the 25th through the 29th will be off. And then usually it's the next week as well. So the 1st through the 5th will be off. And what I can foresee, and I'll get confirmation that the 8th will be the earliest that we come back. But sometimes it's either the 8th or the 15th that we will come back to actual class.
8th or the 15th.
Of January, yeah. But I'll get confirmation on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions on this? I know it's kind of a weird, the holiday season can get very weird. So, cool. Great. So that's the class calendar. We're going to be utilizing Discord. You should all have access to Discord. I got Discord right here. I have to do it in the browser again. My thing is broken. So you should all have access to this cohort. Will, sorry about there was a second class in the web fundamentals that was lingering. I thought it was deleted. And so basically I have to give you guys each roles and it's attached to me specifically. And so you should have had actually privilege to both of them. And so sorry for any confusion that created. That was just a lingering class that I thought had been deleted. So it's now since been deleted to kind of get rid of any kind of questions, but you should have access to this cohort will November. I did a post today that I pinned to the top. So if you just need for quick access to this class calendar, the Zoom link or Dojo Hall, those are all right there as well. Oops. Cool. So please make sure if you have questions, if you have class specific questions, feel free to put them here. And then if you have other questions about just MERN specifically, you can put them here as well. This is monitored by a lot more TAs. Usually this one is just Garrett and I. So some other TAs will hop in occasionally, but if you really need some help and Garrett and I are not available, you can put it in this MERN PT channel, and then other TAs can help you as well. Cool. Okay, cool. For this class, we are going to be doing MERN. And so MERN stands for MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. So Node.js is going to be our backend. That's just a JavaScript backend language or JavaScript language, but it's our backend. So you're going to need to download Node.js. We walk through this on the platform. So if you're coming here, we walk through Node. You're gonna have an installation, how to run it. You guys, most of you probably have downloaded it because of web fundamentals, because if you wanted to, you kind of run JavaScript in VS Code, then you needed Node in order to do that. But just want to make sure that you guys know that this is available before you do anything. So don't try to skip ahead and try to go straight to the fundamentals. If you don't have Node in there, it's not going to work. So please make sure you do that. We're going to be using a tool called Vite to start our React using our library of React. We're going to be using a tool called Vite that's going to kind of get all of the tools with us. We're going to talk about this when we actually get there. But for those of you, I've already seen a question in Discord, so I wanted to approach it that way. If you're already starting with that, which is awesome, great, keep working ahead. Just make sure when you're uploading your files, you delete your node modules. It's okay if you have them or if you delete them, because I can, or anybody can just do, we can do npmi or npm install, and it'll automatically go install all of your dependencies, everything you need. But it's going to give you this folder called node modules. It's really large. So even if you compress it, oftentimes our platform can't even, it's too big for you to upload onto our platform. So please make sure that you delete those. The second option is to put everything on your GitHub. I would wildly encourage you to do this. Put everything on GitHub. This is going to be huge for when you're trying to find a job. Recruiters do look at this. They wouldn't love mine, but it sees how many contributions you have. And so they want to watch that. They want to see that. And so the more green squares you have, the better. Does that make you a better developer? No, it does not. But recruiters don't know that, and that's just what they use. So my encouragement, especially if this is your last stack or it's coming upon your last stack, before projects and algorithms, start just posting to GitHub. Garrett's going to do a 15-minute walkthrough of how to do that today or tomorrow or Thursday in office hour, and that'll be recorded. So if you can't make office hour, that's okay. We'll make sure we record it. But I would encourage you guys to start doing that. So when you enter the job market and the job search, you have an upper hand, because you can never go back in time, right? And make a bunch of contributions. So I would really encourage, instead of uploading everything to the, like zipping it up and uploading it, that you start putting everything to GitHub. But it's totally your decision. Any questions on any of these three things that we've talked about? Okay. Code Runner is just a way that we run code. It is an extension that I use, and so I will use it a lot. Really, all you do, no, there we go. Is you just come in here and say Code Runner, and you'll find it. And it's anytime you're downloading an extension, always see how many times it's been downloaded and what are the stars, because sometimes people can put malicious things and have, if it's got like 2 downloads, but it's called Code Runner and it looks just like this, you don't want to do that, right? So always make sure how many times it's been downloaded. It's a much higher number. This is a great one, and it's a way that we can run code. But you do have to have Node downloaded and installed, so please make sure that you do that as well. Cool. And it looks like Garrett is putting a cool GitHub cheat sheet, which is awesome. Thanks for doing that, Garrett. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is ChatGPT, Bard, and GitHub Copilot. I am a huge advocate of AI. I think that is not in like the trendy, everybody does AI now, but I think as a developer, AI is going to be part of your workflow. I will be using GitHub Copilot. I have GitHub Copilot. It's on. So you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of prediction stuff. It's going to do a lot of code for me. Here's what I would say with it. I would encourage you that while you're learning a language, do not do any GitHub Copilot, or be cautious of how you use ChatGPT and Bard. What I mean by that is and I've seen this with students, and I've had this with students. You guys are adults, so you can make your own decisions. Coding Dojo does have a very strict, you can't use AI on like an exam. So if you are using AI, and it's pretty easy to tell typically. If you do that, then that can be means for academic dishonesty, which is, I think, an expulsion. Expulsion, that's probably the right way to say it. But so obviously you can't on an exam. But I would say really your whole goal here is not to get, a red belt or an orange belt or a black belt. Your goal here is to learn how to code. So though I will be using GitHub Copilot, and the reason is because I'm honestly a terrible typer and I make mistakes. And I don't know if you guys have ever been like this in your class where your instructor is teaching and you know that there's going to be an error because you see the mistake they made and then they didn't see it. And then all of a sudden, they go and they're talking and they try to run their code and then it doesn't work. And it's sort of a waste of time, in my opinion, because then you're like, oh, you forgot this. And they're like, oh, okay, wait, what? And it just wastes everybody time. So I use GitHub Copilot because it doesn't do a lot of that stuff and allows me more time to explain and less error in runtime. That being said, I would really encourage you guys do not do GitHub Copilot because, at least for right now, because you need to learn how to code. You need to learn how to structure these things. And if like I can look at GitHub Copilot, it's not always right. And this will happen during our class. I'll be like, I don't want it to do that. That's actually incorrect. And it's because I know the language and know what it's supposed to do. If you don't know that, and this is what sometimes happens with students is they don't know that, they just plug it in and then their code doesn't work and they can't figure it out, right? But it's because they have the wrong code because Copilot suggests the wrong thing. So that's my encouragement. It's going to hinder your learning for right now. If in weeks, if after you take the exam and you want to test it out in week 7 and week 8, go for it. Like, absolutely. It's going to help it. My thought process is that you will need this because it's going to make you more efficient. Most developers I know use it. So, I'm not anti-AI. Like, I'm a big pro that. The second thing is you can use ChatGPT and Bard, which is Google's kind of AI, in ways that's really going to help your learning, and you can use it in ways that's going to hinder your learning. So by using it in ways such as if there's something you're not quite understanding, if you're not understanding destructuring or the difference between an anonymous function and an arrow function, those are great questions to ask ChatGPT. Hey, explain to me, like, you're a professor, I'm learning code for the first time. The topic of arrow functions and anonymous functions in JavaScript is not making sense. Can you explain it in a way that it might make sense? Or, some little prompt like that. That would be a really good tool for you to learn, and I'm very pro that. Hey, can you just write this code? Write this function that does X, Y, and Z is not great because, again, it hinders your learning. So I would really encourage for AI, again, use it if you would like to, particularly ChatGPT and Bard. Do not use GitHub Copilot. That's my encouragement. You guys are adults. You can do whatever you want. But I think this will hinder your learning a lot more than these two, because these two, if you have the right prompts, it's not going to just do it for you. Any questions on AI or content? Everybody want to contend those thoughts? I'm open to that as well. But most of these are, like, GitHub Copilot costs money as well. ChatGPT for the pro version costs money. I think Bard is free, and there's other tools. When I say, like, don't use GitHub Copilot, don't go like use Amazon's, I think it's called Code Runner or whatever. Like, don't just go do that, right? Any sort of AI that's going to write code for you inherently, I would encourage you guys to stay away from right now while you're learning. You guys put a 1 in the chat if you agree or you understand, or put a 0 if you're wildly against it. Cool. That's usually something I'll do if I talk about a topic. I do try to finish the topic, and then at the end of that, I will say, hey, put a 1 in the chat if that makes sense, put a 0 if it does not. Usually that's the time that if you have questions that you can jump in and ask those questions. So I would ask that, if I'm teaching something and you're not inherently understanding, give it a little bit for us to flesh out the topic. If I have finished the topic and I've moved forward, then go ahead and raise your hand or put it in chat, because I might still cover the thing that you're not understanding. So if you're like, oh, what about this? It's like, oh yeah, okay, that's actually coming. I'm already thinking about, or I'm already talking about that here in a bit. Or if you just stop it, it actually hinders people's learning, right? And so we want to make sure we're cautious of that as well. Okay. That's kind of all my important tools, all of my class kind of things that we're going to need. Are there any questions before we move forward on anything we talked about? Okay, great. Well, if there is questions, obviously, always feel free to raise your hand. Always put the question in the chat. Garrett is here to kind of help monitor that as well. So if you do have a question, Garrett can go in and maybe answer it while I'm talking. So, okay. So I wanted to start here. There's going to be a couple different questions. One thing that's unique about full stack programs here at Coding Dojo, and particularly the part-time accelerated program, is we have people of different levels. And I don't mean levels in the sense that one is better than the other, but we're going to have people who maybe this is their third stack. And so, you know, you might already have this understanding of full stack applications. You've already worked with some databases, and you already have this idea of like, okay, what is session and what is all these different things, right? The unique, unique identifiers or sort of like primary keys. And then, or the part-time accelerator program actually allows you to this be your only full stack. Like you might be coming straight from web fundamentals. If that's the case, that's very okay too. So I do try to tailor it to where it's both. You know, I'll hit like, what is a full stack application? If this is your third stack, you probably know what this is, but we're going to cover that. This might not be applicable to you, but we're going to cover it for the people that maybe this is their first stack. And then how is MERN different than Java or Python? If this is your only stack you're taking, this might not make sense to you because you didn't take Java or Python, but this is for the students that are taking 2 or 3 stacks. So if there's ever a case, I'll try to point it out. Like, hey, this is really for people who just need a refresher, or this is their only stack. And, oh, you know, hey, this is typically for other people, but it's just great knowledge to learn. So, okay, cool. We're going to just jump in. We're going to talk about what is a full stack application. One thing I will also note is I try to incorporate in my teaching different ways to teach. So I try to use visuals. I don't really use videos because it's not fun if I'm just sitting and playing something. I can just send that to you guys later, but I'll try to use visuals or do different things to kind of help your learning style. So that being said, if there is anything I can do to help your learning, please always feel free to reach out to me again via Discord or via email and say, hey, you know, I really learn best if, you know, somebody was like, hey, if I get to see what we're making first and then we go in and code it, that helps me. And it's like, okay, cool. I will preemptively have the code built prior to that. So that way that student learns in their style. So I will do my best to incorporate. I can't maybe always incorporate every learning style, but if there is anything that I could be doing that will help your learning, like, hey, if you could have more visuals, that'd be great. If you could talk about theory more, that'd be great. I'm happy to incorporate those as much as I can. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about a full stack application. I'm going to put 3 things and see if anybody knows what they are. So I'm going to draw shapes. We've got this here. I'm going to do this here. And then I'm going to do something like this here. And then lastly, I will draw this. Okay. So when we're dealing with a full stack application, we're really talking about there's a couple different ways that we can interact with our application, or ways that we can create applications that interact in again, different ways. Right here, I've got this visualization. This visualization has a couple parts to it. Can anybody guess any of the parts? I guess would be kind of the first step. Can anybody guess what this red box might be? We're thinking about full stack.
Database?
Not
Or
the
front end?
database is on there. I guess it's guessing is kind of arbitrary, right? So yes, Joseph, there's a database. So I'm going to put it. Let's just do that. I'm going to say what are the different parts of a full stack application? That might be a better thing. So thanks, Joseph. Yes, we're gonna have a database here. Anything that anybody that can think of from a full stack application perspective?
Like a client,
Client, yeah, also known as like the front end, right?
front end, yeah.
Yeah, so exactly, front end. And then what is my last kind of main portion? Anybody know? So I got my front end, my database,
Back end.
Yeah, exactly. And I see Brittany put that to backend, right? I'll put that right here, actually. I don't know if it's supposed to have this, but one thing to know is I'm a terrible speller, and so it's just not my strong suit. So if I did it incorrectly, then my bad. Yeah. So really a full stack application from a very high level is you've got a front end, or also known as your client, right? So this is your user. So them interacting, right? So this is what they're seeing. This is the visualization. When I go to Google, when I go to Discord, this is what I am actually seeing. Can anybody tell me what this green arrow represents? What do we do? What does the front end do to the back end?
You use post methods to send data.
Yeah, you do. You can post method is a version. Yeah, I see it also in here. It's a request, right? So we can make requests. They can be post, they can be put, they can be patched, we can do a get request. So we make all these type of requests and basically say, hey, here's what I want to do. I want to, if we think of Facebook, I want to add a new friend, right? So I'm on my front end, and let's say that I see this person, I click the button of add friend, that goes and sends a request to my backend for my backend to do something. Now my backend might say, okay, cool. I know the functionality of how to add a friend in my code, but all of my data is stored somewhere, right? And where it's stored is my database. And I want to make sure that my user, their friend list is updated to include this friend. So that request goes from my client to my front, to my back, from my front end to my back end. And then my back end will make a, I'm going to say rec. And it's going to make a request to my database and say, hey, can you save this person on their friends? My database is going to give me something back. Can anybody remember what that is? Or does anybody know what this is? You learned it in web fundamentals, like the first day we talk about this. Exactly, Johnny. It's a response, right? This is called the request response cycle. So really, this is all coding is we're going to make some sort of request. We're going to make a request to a backend. A backend's either going to be able to function and handle it and then go ahead and give us a response, or it might have to go talk to a database and say, hey, can you save this or can you retrieve this? If I just want to get all of my friends, we're going to make the request to the backend. The backend's going to go ping our database, get all of our friends, give it the database is going to say, yep, I have all the friends. Here you go. Our server says, okay, great. I have all my friends. Let me give it back to my front end. And then it visualizes all of our friends. So this is called a request response cycle. And this is a full stack application. Now, sometimes our backend doesn't just deal with a database and it talks to other things. Can anybody, this is like a bonus points. It's not really part of the request response, full stack software engineering, but can anybody guess what these are? These little diamonds? Not a model. Yeah, exactly, Joseph. It's an API. So the API stands for Application Programming Interface. That is a big word to really mean, let's say that if I'm using something that maybe uses Google Maps, well, I have two options, right? If I'm doing some maps, I can either spend lots of money to go and map the nation and figure out how to do that and have a whole bunch of like algorithms that's going to get us the shortest distance between point A to point B based on these roads. I could do all that, or I can just use Google's API of Google Maps and sort of bring that in here. And so an API, we're going to talk about these in week 7. But an API really is just a way that we can use other people's code and tools. And sometimes we make a request and a response to them. They give us back, hey, can you show me the shortest point from point A to point B? We make a request to our Google Maps. It gives that back, and maybe we show it on our front end. It's all just a request response cycle. And this is what a full stack application really looks like. Now for us, it is a little bit unique. And this is where we talked about what's the difference between MERN and Java/Python is in Java and Python. So if you've already taken those, you really just did sort of this back end. Python, we have Java. You had a database, so you had maybe MySQL, not maybe, you had MySQL. And that was kind of it. And maybe you used like some Bootstrap on the front end, but it's kind of very basic. Well, here, what we do is, I'm gonna do this line here. For MERN, we're gonna have a node.js backend. So we're just using JavaScript as our backend. So it should be similar-esque to how Python and Java worked. Instead of having a MySQL or a relational database, what we're gonna have. Oh, weird. Perfect. What we're going to have instead is we're going to have a non-relational or MongoDB database. So this is going to be what we call non-relational. We're going to get way into that in the future, but this is where it's unique, is we also are going to have a front-end library called React. And this is kind of like an additional language that we're going to be learning. It's not a language, it's a library of JavaScript, but it's an additional piece we're going to be learning. So there is really one more step to this stack compared to Python and Java. We're still going to have our backend. We're still dealing with the database, but we also now have to understand and learn a library on the front end. So that's where it all sort of the full stack portion comes in. And then in order for these two to talk, maybe this, in order for these two to talk, our server and our front end, we're going to use something called Express. And so that's where the MERN, so M for MongoDB, E for Express, R for React, and N for Node. So that is how that's what we're going to be learning in MERN. Are there any questions on sort of this full stack application, how it works, what we are doing here? Or any differences? Does that make sense? You guys put a 1 in the chat if this is making sense, put a 0 if it absolutely does not make sense.
Well, we're also gonna have the HTML, CSS, front end, React.
Yep. So really, the way that React is going to work is you're going to have CSS. Yes, kind of. It's not really the focus. I'm not big on CSS when you know, because learning React in itself and then having to go do CSS, you absolutely can. But yeah, every front end is going to have really your fundamental framework is going to be, we're going to do it in a different way, but it's going to be HTML, CSS, and instead of JavaScript, we're going to be doing React, but you can still do what we call vanilla JavaScript, which is just JavaScript by itself on the front end, but we will be adding React. Great question. But yeah, we'll still be doing that. We do it in a different way. So we don't necessarily have an HTML file. We have a JSX file. So it's handled a little bit differently, but fundamentally, yeah, we're still going to do some components that look like HTML and CSS.
So
go ahead.
yeah, I'm coming from Python, and I'm just wondering what makes MERN, I guess, easier to learn or a better test tube for experimenting with APIs.
It doesn't inherently, it's not easier to learn. I would say actually Python is probably easier to learn. And it's not inherently better dealing with APIs. The only thing that's nice is most APIs deal with JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. And so by it being in JavaScript, it opens up a little bit more to your API sort of window, in the sense of there's maybe some more APIs, like all the big APIs often have like an SDK for Python or just a way that you can communicate with Python. Lots of them do not. But JavaScript so kind of maybe opens it up, but it's not. I just like to bring this up because this is a big portion of development is kind of interacting with APIs. So that's a focus that I try to teach you, because you will be interacting with APIs. You know, if you get a developer job, usually you're going to be interacting with some sort of API. So it's a good thing to know, but it doesn't make it inherently like Node.js is not better really with APIs than like Python. But again, I would probably say it's maybe not as easy to learn as Python, because we have this additional library that we have to learn. Does that make sense, Joseph?
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
I also came from Python. So the Express, does it have an equivalent in Python, or it's totally different?
It's
In
totally different because what we're going to have is we're going to have React is going to act as so if you guys are coming from Python or Java, you spun up a server. So maybe you had a Flask server, right? That you spun up and went to localhost. What's going to be unique here is React itself will have its own server. And so it'll have its own server. And then Node.js will have its own server. And so we'll actually have two servers running at the same time on our computer, which our computers are definitely able to handle. But because we only had one server on the other side, we only had our Flask or our Java, it didn't really matter. We can communicate with our HTML or front end very simply. Now that we have two, we have to have a tool that sort of helps communicate to them.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great question. Any other questions? Again, we're going to go in depth. So this is not the only time we're going to talk about this. I just like to give an overview because as we build in, I'll talk about React in our own server, and then we'll talk about Express when that's necessary. We'll talk about Node and its server when that's necessary. So, but this is just a very high level of what we're going to be talking about over the next 8 weeks. So if you're stressed now, don't get stressed. We haven't talked about any of this. But we will be talking about it. So just wanted to kind of give you guys, this is what we will be talking about. Any questions? Cool. Okay, I'm going to delete this unless anybody wants to, anybody wants to take a screenshot. You're going to have, I'll give you 5 seconds to take a screenshot. And if not, I will delete that. So I'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. If you guys ever need me to redraw this, I'm happy to do that. It's no big deal. And thanks for putting up with my bad drawing. Okay. We have a couple. So I usually like to be very, very cautious of your time because you guys are, lots of you guys maybe work today or just you guys are humans. So we're going to kind of talk through some of this, really these for the next if you're okay with it, I might keep your 5 minutes over. We can jump into destructuring. It's very simple. So I can talk about that either tomorrow in office hour and record that, or I could talk about it in class tomorrow or the next couple of days. So we're just going to talk from a very high level about data types, and then we will jump in to, and then we'll kind of be done. Data types with strings, numbers, booleans, arrays, and objects. Okay, so this is, the whole idea is that this is a refresher for anybody that's coming from Python, from Java. If you're coming from web fundamentals, then you're probably maybe even not ahead, but this might seem a little bit more familiar to you. So I'm going to say ways to declare a variable. So we first have var. Then we've got, let me see here. Oh, there we go. Then we've got let, and then we're going to have const. So var is basically, there's going to be some keywords that we can use in JavaScript to declare variables. There's really 3 of them. It's var, let, and const. Now, var is the OG. JavaScript was created in 6 days. And so with that, there's some weird nuancy things. Basically, Netscape needed something to compete. And so they had this guy, I don't know how much coffee they drank or how much, I don't know. They built different to build an entire language in 6 days, but they built JavaScript in 6 days. And so because of that, obviously there's some corners to be cut, or there's some weird things that have happened. And so if you ever look up like weird JavaScript stuff, or if you ever look up JavaScript memes, there's going to be tons of stuff, kind of weird stuff that doesn't make sense with JavaScript. But with that, there was only one way to declare a variable, and that was var. Now, and so the way that we would do that is we would say like var, my name is John, right? Now it's giving me a squiggly line because it's saying, hey, don't use var. It's been sort of deprecated, if you will, meaning that though you can still use it and it'll still work with JavaScript, there are now better ways to declare variables than var. And so introducing that into ES6, which is on our platform, we talk about it. So I always like to kind of point out where on the platform we talk about certain things. So if we go to fundamentals here, we'll talk about this ECMAScript. So ES stands for ECMAScript, and then 6 is just a way that we can, or sorry, it's a kind of scripting language, right? So JavaScript is the scripting language of the internet. Everywhere you go is JavaScript. So the way that we have this, we have like these certain standards, right? And one of them is the ECMAScript. And so they came out with, okay, we need a better way of handling variables. And so what it did is it created 2 different ones. One called let. So instead we just say let my name equal John. And then the other is const. So let's say let age equal 30. Sure. Sorry, const my name. I don't know why I said that. Cool. Now the big difference is this is mutable, meaning that after I declare it, I could then go in and say something like my name equals Jane. That's fine, right? Even though I've declared it here, I can go in and I can change it. Now const is what we call immutable. Immutable. So if you dealt with Python, there's no such thing as immutable. But immutable means that once we declare it, I cannot say age equals 31. Right? I can't redo those values. You can already see I get a squiggly line. It says modify this with const because it's immutable. Once it's been declared, I can't go in and redeclare a new value for it. You sort of think about const, like if you've got really important information that should not ever change, you can put that in const. Most things that you're going to use are actually going to be let. Let sort of works like var. Var is also mutable, meaning that once we change it, once we, kind of declare it, we can change it. That's where the issue happened. And that's why they changed from var to let, because with var, it was mutable, so you could change it anywhere. And there's this idea called scope, which I would really encourage you guys to read this. And it's talking about global, local, and global and local scope. var, the big main difference is var can become global or became global. So if you declared it really anywhere, it can take over a value and get redeclared. So if you have something like first name and maybe you're working on the code and somebody else was also working on the code and you didn't know that, and you could redeclare that value, and then it kind of became kind of wonky. Whereas let, now the scope is more bound to kind of where it's at. And so it prevents you from overriding code, 100,000 lines above you, right? That you maybe didn't know, you didn't see. So that's kind of what the pros and cons about let are. You can also look up, this is the idea of like asking ChatGPT if you're kind of like, wait, okay, I understand scope now. What are the differences between var and let? That's a great question to ask ChatGPT to further your expansion of your understanding. Cool. Any questions on sort of these first 3 things, kind of really the keywords to declaring a variable? Not super crazy, but any questions on this? Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to get started. So we're talking about data types. If you've dealt with really any of the languages, you should have seen this, whether it's in Java or Web Fundamentals or Python. You should see the different data types, and there's really 3 of them. First one that I always talk about is strings. And so a string is really any set of characters. These could be letters, these could be numbers, this could be a combination of the sort that is encapsulated by these quotation marks, right? And so this is just a string. So if you can sort of think about words or really lots of different kind of any of the language stuff. If you're talking about words or characters, or if you have like a paragraph or something, those could be considered strings. Now, the reason that's important is because based on the data type, it will save that information. So here, if I'm creating this name of const, or if I'm creating this variable const, it will save it as a string type, meaning that it has certain qualities that we're going to get into string types and the different nuancy things that it can do, but it has different qualities that you can do compared to like a number. Like a number can do multiplication, right? You can do some sort of arithmetic on it that you can't really do with a string, right? And so we want to make sure that we have the correct types when we're dealing with our information. So we have strings, and there's different types of strings. Or sorry, we can do different things with strings. We can do string concatenation, string interpolation. That's a little bit beyond. We'll talk about that in a bit, but just want to make you aware that the way that we do strings here is we just say const and the variable name equals, and then whatever our string is. JavaScript is what we call a interpretive language, where you don't have to declare what the data type is like you do in Java. Or C# if you've kind of done any of those strictly type languages. You don't have to declare it. So what will happen is JavaScript reads top to bottom, and then when it reads it, it'll infer what type of what data type your variable is. And it does that by understanding, okay, here I've got these quotation marks. I'm inferring that this is a string. There's some pros and cons with that. A little bit of speed. You give up some speed by doing these interpreted languages compared to a strictly type language. But it's a little bit easier to write, right? You don't have to do as much, so people like it. Okay, the next one is numbers. Again, basically we have our age. Oh, let's do that. We have our variable here, and we set it equal to a number. This can be a float as well, meaning that it could be a decimal. But again, same thing, it's interpreted. So we have our const or our let. We have our variable name. And then if we have a 0.5, that's what we call a float. Or if it's a whole number, it's just called an integer. And the last one, would be a Boolean. Boolean is just true or false. In JavaScript, the way we say true or false, if you're coming from Python, it was a capital T and capital F. In JavaScript, we do lowercase t, lowercase f. I don't know if anybody knows what it is in Java. I don't remember if it's capital or lowercase, but here we just say lowercase t true or capital or lowercase f false. And this is just, it's binary, right? It's either true or false. That's all it can ever be. Any questions on the primitive data types? I know I'm kind of speeding through and I'm sorry. If there's anything you guys need me to go over, I'm happy to go over it in office hour. And I might just do a quick little like, oh, here's what we can do with X, Y, or Z in office hour. And all of those will be recorded always. So any questions on these primitive data types? Okay. There's another one called null, but we're not going to worry about that. So I'm going to talk about composite data types. So these are basically data types that consist of multiples of either one type or a whole bunch of different data types. So here I can have const hobbies. So this is me declaring my array. This is an array, right? And you guys probably have dealt with an array before. You should have. Anyway, I'm declaring my array name. And then here I've got, here's my value of a string. Every value is separated. So I've got comma string, and then I could do something like 1, comma true. Oops. Right. And so here, because it's composite, I can have multiples of one data type, or I can have a whole bunch of different data types. So I've got strings, numbers, and a Boolean. Now, something that's unique about arrays is that the positioning is all about an index position, right? Can anybody remember, what does the first index position start with? Yeah, it starts with 0. Great job, Brittany. So anytime I want to, if I wanted this first piece of it, I could just console.log hobbies 0, right? I just say my array. In the index position, I want to draw. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So I say hobbies 0. If I run this using Code Runner, I get movies. Good job. And the last one is just an object. So here, let's say that I wanted to have a couple different things. And as you can see here with an array, that's really nice that I can pull out, this position index. That's great, but maybe I didn't know what this meant. So let's maybe say that I had like gray and blue. Right? These are two strings, that's fine, but maybe this represents car color and eye color. And if I have an array, it's not really intuitive, right? I can't really tell that. That's where an object comes in. It's another way that I can store data. This is going to be a very, very popular way that we'll store data. You're going to have to deal with objects quite a bit, where we can say const address. So here's my object name. Instead of these square brackets, we use a curly bracket. Sometimes I call them curly boys. And then instead of doing an index position, we use what we call a key value pair. And so what this means is I have this key here. So on the left is a key, and on the right is the value. So if I wanted to identify and say, what is the address? I have two different ways I can do that. I can console log address dot, so my object, dot the key name, and that is going to return the value at that key. So if I come here, I get Boston. Now that's it's called dot notation. I can also console.log and say address dot, and instead of saying dot state, I can say address. I can put a square bracket here. It's called bracket notation. And then I put the key name within my bracket. Now note that I have to put the string. I have to put strings around it. And so this will also go in. It'll go to my object of address. It'll find the key of state using this bracket notation, and it'll return the value for me. So I should get Boston and then MA. Okay. We breeze through our composite data types. I'm going to stop here. Are there any questions on anything? I know that I went so fast. I promise you, most times we will not go that fast. I will not be so quick. I'm usually pretty slow when I talk, but I just want to be cautious of your time. Went a little bit too long, probably on the first portion, and usually this is how the first class goes. But are there any questions on what I talked about? Anything I can clarify on these? They should be fairly, you should be kind of used to dealing with, in Python, we call these dictionaries or lists. If you're coming from Web Fundamentals, you probably have dealt with these as well. But are there any questions on sort of these things? Anything anybody has a question on? Oh. Okay. Well, I'm so sorry. I'm 8 minutes over. So I'll stop the recording here. Tomorrow, what we will be talking about is, if we go to our class here, tomorrow I'm going to be breaking down callback promises. No, sorry. I was like, oh, that's way too far ahead. We're going to talk about ternaries. We might talk about map and filter. I can almost guarantee that that'll be on this portion of it on Thursday. What we'll talk about is destructuring and arrow functions is going to be my main focus. The whole idea is that I want to make sure that you, we didn't get to destructuring today, but we'll hit that first thing tomorrow. And then you should be able to get up to where you can do the assignment there. And then we'll get to functional components and props. So we will be sort of, as you can see, tomorrow we are already into React. So we'll be talking about, maybe in office hour, I'll talk about destructuring, rest and spread. And then we'll hit arrow functions. And then we'll talk about basically intro to React and jump straight into it. So, okay, I will stop the recording there.